Welcome to all of you to another episode of the Imperfect Show. This week we decided to talk about something that we haven't really talked about before on this show, but something about us. And we this week have been getting ready for a Mighty Oaks Women's Legacy Program. And a lot of the members of our women's team have been involved in that. We've been preparing for that. And in the process of that, it just kind of caused me to stop and think just about Jeremy and I getting involved in Mighty Oaks and kind of what caused us to do that. And just the opportunity that we've had to serve in that and what that means to us. And so we want to talk about that this week and just take a few minutes to share with all of you just why our hearts are kind of, I guess, knit with this organization and the reason that we started serving with them.
Yeah, we have been asked, a number of times over the years why we're involved with Mighty Oaks and why we decided to get involved with Mighty Oaks and so many of the questions that go along with that. And those are fair questions. And it's funny, when you're in the middle of something, you forget that not everyone in your life knows why you're doing what you're doing, or even exactly what it is you're doing. And this has been a good process for us to really even talk through and remember. But so much of it is because of our story. And that's something that we have shared maybe in bits and pieces. But it's interesting when you consider your story, when any of us look at the story of our lives that God allows us to live, how God can bring all of the pieces of those stories together. And I think for us, Mighty Oaks is kind of that. It's God's used different pieces and different parts of our story to, or brought all of those pieces together in Mighty Oaks. And I think that's what maybe a lot of people who have known us at different stages of our lives don't understand.
Maybe.
And so so it's good to go back and remember that and understand that. But along with that, to also explain maybe to those who aren't super clear on what we do exactly as the Mighty Oaks Foundation, what it is we do and how it works and how God uses it in lives. So we want to take a couple minutes just to walk through that. And if you're interested in us, maybe this will be interesting to you. If you're interested in Mighty Oaks, maybe it'll be interesting to you. If you're not interested in either, maybe you need to watch something else. All right, so we'll start with kind of the path that took us to this. I served in the Marine Corps, again, as most of you who would watch this know, and served in a couple of different capacities. But in 2003, deployed with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines to Iraq, and that was the beginning of the war in Iraq. Went through that, came home, and acted on a decision we had made before I left. It was a process of really prayer and discussion where we decided to step away from the Marine Corps and that I would go and work at the church that we had been attending in Oceanside, California. So came home from Iraq, and literally 30 days later, we were working at the church. And if you've watched any of our videos or watched any of the videos that I've done elsewhere, I've talked about this, but what seems like it would be a good transition was a really rough transition for us. And it was a rough transition, really, I think, practically for about a year. I think the transition from the Marine Corps and everything that was involved in that was much longer than that. Things we had to learn and things we had to discover. But coming home from Iraq and with young kids, a new job, really stepping away from something that I identified with, I had a very, very difficult time understanding how to do what I was being asked to do at the church. And, nothing crazy, but it just didn't make sense to me. I didn't know how to walk away from what I had done kind of back here and do something new. I would often take it out on my wife and kids or the people that I worked with. And so it was really a difficult year. And during that year, I think one of the things that we had to do was put some distance between us and the military. I've never been a big, wear Marine Corps t-shirts and hats and stuff guy anyhow. But as thankful as I was for our service, for my service, and, we were thankful for the opportunity to have served, it did not serve us any longer to hang on to that. I had to move past that. And part of that for me was, again, being thankful for it, but not hanging on to it and just pressing forward, which we did for a long time. So I had this process that I went through, starting when I was a teenager, to go into the Marine Corps, to become a Marine, commissioned as a Marine officer, served in combat. All of that really represented, basically the first half of my life. Susanne and I met in college, and when we met, you knew what I was planning on doing. I was already involved in a commissioning program, and so Susanne had been with me through much of that journey. That was all we knew. That was all we wanted to do, and we stepped out of that. And so when we then got into the church, ministry space and started doing what we were doing there, I think for both of us, we could look back on the military and kind of wonder, what was all of that about? And for me, that has been a lesson over time, and it's taken 20 years to figure it out. But that the pieces of your life that God allows you to live, He will bring together at some point. And you don't know how that will be or what that will look like, but He does bring that together. And at that point in our lives, we really felt like, I think, we were making a move completely out of the military and out of the military space. Other than people we met at church, we weren't going to have anything to do with that anymore, and completely focusing on something which at the time felt 180 degrees, felt very, very different.
And it's really not something that we ever envisioned ourselves doing with our lives. I think neither one of us ever envisioned a life of full-time ministry in church work. And so that was a really interesting kind of transition for us. We knew that that's what God was calling us to, but it was just something that was completely foreign to us.
Yeah.
We didn't go to school for ministry. We didn't,
Right.
we were really involved in our church and all of that, but that was not something that we ever envisioned ourselves doing. And so it was really completely different. And it did feel, like, what did you say, 180 degrees?
Yeah, I mean, it was like we were walking in a different direction.
Just completely, opposite of anything we had ever talked about doing. And so it was a really interesting transition for us.
Yeah. I grew up in a pastor's home, and a lot of people know that. But one of the things that I determined early on, and I say it jokingly a lot of times, but seriously, I was thankful to have grown up in that home. I am thankful to have grown up in a pastor's home. My dad and mom, watching the sacrifices that they made to raise us, to do what they believe God wanted them to do. I'm very thankful for all of that. But I knew at a pretty young age that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a part of that. Again, I'm not mad at God. I wasn't mad at God. I wasn't running from God. I just didn't feel like that was what I wanted to be a part of. And so the idea of ministry was not something that was, I don't think, on our radar at all.
No. And honestly, when we were it really, I think, was cemented in my mind when we were in college. We went to a Christian college, and there's a lot of, like any Christian college, a lot of, people there for ministry, a lot of people, guys that are studying pastoral ministry or youth pastor. And it was like, I don't want to be
Right.
attached to that. I don't want to be involved in that. And I think even in college, meeting people that were studying that and all that, it just cemented in my mind, that's not the road that I want to go down. I was studying education, and it was really on my heart at that time to be a teacher, and just didn't,
Yeah.
I think we had planned out our life. We were going to have, career in the military.
Right.
I was going to be a teacher, and that was kind of the road that we were going
Yeah.
to go down. So.
But then, and I think in the process of time, again, we were attending a good church, the church that we ended up working at. And ironically, now, 20 years later, attend again. So we were attending that church. And, for me, I think for both of us, we started attending church because we were newly married, we had young children, and we knew it was the right thing to do. I don't think it was a conviction to really serve God in a meaningful way
No.
at that moment, right? We
No.
knew we were supposed to do it.
Yeah.
We had family members that cared about us doing that, and so we did. But being there, being at a church like that, and this is why it's so important. We talk about this often in our program and elsewhere. It's so important to be in a good church that really preaches the Bible and cares about what God thinks, because that's what was imparted to us there. And even though neither one of us planned on being in ministry, God began to work in our hearts because we were a part of a ministry, just as church people. That was exciting, and things were happening, and lives were being changed. And it didn't take long before we really came to the point we realized that's where we want to be.
Yeah, and I really feel like through that, the ministry of that church, God changed our hearts towards ministry. in that process, and just us being involved in ministries together, and just with other church people, other military families too. God really just turned our hearts towards that work and church work, and that's really kind of where He started planting the seeds in our minds of kind of moving forward in that way.
Yeah. So got involved there again in the process of trying to find my way forward and lead my home, and not be an obnoxious jerk all of the time. I had to, walk away from the military in that process, but it seemed like that's what God set in front of us. In an ironic twist of fate, having not wanted to be in the military, 5 years after serving at that church, and I'll spare you the details, but we ended up moving up to the San Francisco Bay Area, and had the privilege of accepting a pastorate of a small church in the town. At the time it was Newark, California. Now it's Fremont, California. 2 towns right next to each other. And started pastoring. And so again, you go from serving the military, we believe that was our whole life, to transitioning into ministry, but in a military community. So we still had a bit of attachment, even though we were trying to kind of move beyond that. And then planted into the San Francisco area. And wherever you are in the country, you don't think of patriotism and veterans when you think about San Francisco. And where we lived was actually, a fairly conservative community, kind of a suburb of Oakland, really, if you can think of it that way. And the folks that we ministered to were incredible people, but it was a very diverse culture. So it wasn't even that it wasn't, it was like anti-American. It wasn't that. It was a community, and is a community, Fremont, California, that is primarily not American-born folks. So they're people who work in the Silicon Valley and work in that area, incredible people, but they come from all over the country, or all over the world rather. And so we went into a very diverse, what felt like a mission field type of environment. And man, God used that in so many amazing ways to teach us so many, wonderful lessons, good lessons. I would imagine there were some hard times there. There were some struggles, but I think our struggles were more personal struggles and us trying to figure things out as a family, personally, than it was because of the church. And the church folks there were incredible. And God allowed us to do some amazing things, to see some things happen in a great way. And we're very thankful for that. But in the process of being there, social media wasn't a big thing when I left the Marine Corps. It became a thing later on. And in 2012, I had a Marine reach out to me. One of the Marines that I served with, Jeremy Mahon, who's a friend of mine, reached out to me, and we had served together. We were in Iraq together. I had not talked to him again since we left. And so it had been almost 10 years. He reached out to me, said, "Hey, I know this guy. This guy is starting an organization. I don't know what it's about, but it's faith-based. I don't know what that means, but you're a Christian and he's a Christian, and maybe you guys would get along. He's starting it. He's trying to get some veterans to come, and he asked me to reach out to some people that I might be able to get there." And so that was the whole thing. That was the whole invitation. And figured out that Chad Robichaud and his family, his wife Kathy, and their kids had about a year previous started the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and we're in the process of putting it together. So it's a long process, and again, that's another whole story. But the process of putting it together and putting the programming together, and a big part of that process was connecting with veterans. Veterans are extremely cynical, don't want to attend anything, and that was the challenge at that moment. And so I attended a Mighty Oaks session. It was the second one that had ever been conducted. Chad was leading that. He was using instructors from someone else's program, actually, that they just came to help out while he figured out how to structure everything. And we met, and that was in 2012. And he asked me at that time, "Hey, would you ever be interested in teaching for the sessions? We're going to do a few a year. It's not a big deal. You'd have to take some time off from the church, a couple weeks a year. But that would be it. Would you be interested in that?" And I was. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons, when I came home and told Susanna about some of the conversations and the connection there, one of the reasons that I felt so compelled to connect and to support Mighty Oaks at that time, pastoring the church and 10 years removed from my service, was because of a conversation that I had with the Marines that I had served with. There were about 10 of us around a fire, and heard life stories and heard relationship situations and heard about Marines that I had served with that had taken their lives and all the struggles of, being a veteran, coming home from war, and these struggles we hear about now. I had walked so far away from that, I just wasn't connected to it at all, and I was connected that week and realized that I had to use whatever resources I had available to me to continue to serve those folks. And Mighty Oaks was a vehicle to do that. Again, it was just getting started. Chad was beginning to move things forward. Myself and one other guy came together, and a few months later we taught in another session, and that moved us forward. But I think for us, really our heart, from the time we left our church in Oceanside to pastoring to whatever, our heart was to see people reached with the gospel, with the good news that Jesus loves them, that he died for their sin, that he brings hope, healing, and restoration, as well as forgiveness. Our mission, our big mission, if you will, as a family, was to communicate that message. At one time, I was communicating that message as an associate pastor and doing women's ministry at the church where we started. Then it was pastoring and leading folks there. And this, through Mighty Oaks, was another opportunity to do that. So it fit very well within what we really saw as our calling. And I think it's important for people to understand that, because it's important for people to get a hold of that. Don't let a location or a specific structure or some model become your mission. Let it be something bigger than that. And I don't think we were smart enough to figure that out. It was just, that was our mission, and I couldn't have articulated that a long time ago, but certainly now I can. We were able to move from one space to another because the mission of communicating truth to people continued, and we had opportunities to do that.
And I felt bad at times that we kind of moved from thing to thing, and I feel like we did it so much, but it wasn't really that much.
It feels like a lot. It really wasn't.
But it really wasn't. But I felt bad about that at times. Why did God call us away from our church in Oceanside, and then put us there in San Francisco area for a while, and then why would He move us from that to do this other thing? And so a lot of times, I feel like we can get in this kind of place where we're asking, why is this happening, and why am I moving? Because I'm happy here and I'm listen. It's kind of what you said just a little while ago. We never know how God's going to put all the pieces together. And I felt bad about maybe us transitioning all those times, because there's people that stay in one place for their whole life. Right. But it's exactly what you said, is that God, we had a mission that we're focused on, and that we knew we wanted to be involved in whatever way to reach people. And these were just the ways that God used us at different times in our lives to reach people. And I think that's why for us, serving through Mighty Oaks has just been so impactful, I think, to us personally, because it's a place where God has allowed us to minister to people using all the ways that He has, trained us up to this point.
Yeah, sure.
And the different places that He's had us, I feel like have prepared us for the ministry that we're doing through Mighty Oaks. And that's why it's been so impactful for us. And I think that's why it was so maybe attractive to us to serve with Mighty Oaks, because it will fit with the mission that we have for our life personally, for our family, for us. And we could see how God had prepared us to move into that. And really, honestly, it was the connection too. I felt like it felt like kind of maybe like home again, because we were connected to military families again, and we were able to, have some things in common and be able to minister to them, be ministered to. And I think those kind of were the things that really spoke to us about coming alongside Chad and Kathy and serving in that way.
Yeah, and you go through this process, and you do feel bad about not only the transitioning, but I think one of the things, and this is what we talk about most often when we reflect on those days of transition, is you feel bad about the people that didn't come with you. Because none of this is to say there weren't opportunities at the church in Oceanside or at the church in Fremont. Of course there were. There were incredible opportunities, and still are, by the way. But each person, and I would say in this case, each couple, each family, is being developed by God for something specific. And as we consider the path that God brought us along, each one of those things for us was God developing us in a different way, or teaching us different things, equipping us in different ways to end up where he ultimately wanted us to go. And, we're not dying anytime soon, I hope. So ultimate might be strong, but to bring us to the point where he wanted us to be, and he'll continue to do that work and continue to refine us. But we look back on the people that loved us and that we loved at each one of those stages. And man, God was so good. And those people, in many cases continue that mission. And so we're thankful for that. But then as you transition into something else, it is amazing to see God bring those pieces together. And this is why it's so important. And we've struggled through this so many times. I mean, we've had hundreds of conversations. Is this what God wants us to do? Is this what we want to do? Do we feel like this is the right thing? And we'll probably have more conversations like that because we're human and frail and imperfect. But as you have those conversations, it's amazing to see God bring those pieces together. And you need to be very aware and very deliberate, aware that God is using you and will use you, aware of where he's taking you, but very deliberate about doing what he's placed in front of you right now. And we try to be diligent, even in the midst of confusion oftentimes, about doing what God has placed in front of us right now. And then through that, over time, you see how God brings those pieces together. And it's been amazing to see and amazing to experience. And our story is so similar to so many other people's stories who are involved with Mighty Oaks. One of the things that makes what we do work in our organization is the fact that everyone who leads in the organization, from organizational leaders to the team leaders and the other folks who facilitate sessions as they're happening, they're all people. We're all people who have lived through, in different ways, but who have lived through what we're talking about. We're a veterans and active duty service members organization. We serve those communities, run by people who have lived that life. So what that means practically is the teachers, the instructors, the team leaders have served in the military. On our women's program, so many of them have served in the military or been married to those who have served in the military. So they're speaking to an audience not from a position of head knowledge necessarily, but from the heart and from experience. And as I consider God, the way that he took us, or the path that he took us, that's so similar to the way he's brought so many other people, using their experience and using what he's allowed them to live through to be a help and a blessing to others. And I think that's why we, as an organization, have seen such an incredible impact take place.
Mm-hmm. It's just really has been so, I keep using the word impactful, but I think just to see people being reached through that way. It's just a testimony-based teaching. We call it peer-to-peer leadership or discipleship, where basically you're just taking someone who's been through the same thing that you've been through and allowing them to get to the place where you are now. And so it's just to see people come to the programs over and over again, and just kind of see how that has made such an impact on those that have come through. And it really is that. It's not, like you said, speaking from head knowledge, but speaking from having experienced that themselves in their lives.
Yeah, and that's why the idea of this show is called the Imperfect Show, and this idea that none of us is perfect. All of us are trying to figure things out. By the grace of God, we're able to move forward, but there's no perfection here. It's folks who are a little bit further down the road, looking back or reaching back to those who are still trying to get up, perhaps in many cases, and bringing them along. And that model, again, speaking from the experience of what we do, and I can only speak to what we do, works so well. But in every area of life, that should be the model, I think. It should be, not us pretending like we've got it all figured out, but being willing to share where we failed or where we've struggled. But beyond that, not just sharing those things, where we found hope and how we've been able to move forward in spite of those struggles.
And being a part of Mighty Oaks, I think that's one of the things that it has taught me, probably one of the biggest things that it's taught me, is that just in life in general, it's okay to reach out to someone. It's okay to, when someone says, you ask, how are you? They say, I'm fine. And you can tell they're not. Yeah. It's okay to say, what's going on? I know you're not fine. At church, at work, just people that you come across in general. It's okay to be that way because most people are wanting someone to just ask them and help them, and maybe something that you've been through can be a help to them. And so that's been kind of the biggest, I think, thing that I've learned from being a part of the Mighty Oaks ministry and just ministering in the programs is just seeing that that's what people want.
Right.
These people want to connect with someone who can help them because of what they've been through as well. And maybe, and I tell people this, people in the women's program, I tell the leaders all the time, you don't necessarily have to have struggled the same as someone else to know what it means to struggle, because we all have had hard times in our lives, and maybe doesn't look the same as someone else, but struggle is struggle, and we all know what it's like to have that in our lives. And so to be able to help someone through what they're going through, because you've been through something as well, can speak volumes to them, because maybe they feel like they're alone, and maybe they feel like no one else knows what it feels like to be in this place where that's so hopeless and I don't know how I'm going to move forward from this. And just to have somebody come to them and say, hey, I know you're not okay. What can I do for you? Let me help you. And that's really one of the biggest things I've learned is just it's okay to talk to people like that. And I'm I would say, self-proclaimed introvert, and so it doesn't come natural for me, but it has made me so much more comfortable in doing that with other people and just reaching out to people in that way. And I think that's, for me personally in my life, have been able to speak to so many people in that way. I say church because that's kind of where, Jeremy said we're back at our church and we're attending our church in Oceanside right now, and just have had the opportunity to minister to people there as well again. And so for the most part, it's been just really a joy, I guess, to be able to serve in that way there again. The military families, but also just church families in that way. And that's just been a tool that God has used in my life to just speak to people in that way. Yeah,
and it's all of those things that have allowed us as an organization to find success. And we can all define success differently. When you exist to serve veterans, active duty service members, and now more and more first responders and their spouses, success for you is being able to do that. And, in the very beginning, we started saying we'll get as many people as we can. We'll do this a few times a year. And, hopefully the money will be there and we'll try to make it all work. And we've gone from that to this is a unique year, right? We've had some unique struggles this year, as has everyone. But normally, having 800, nearly 1,000 students come through one of our week-long programs, where they'll come to a program, they'll spend a week with us at one of our 4 facilities across the country. We pay for the time they're there. We pay for the travel to get there. They don't have to pay for anything because of just tremendous donors that we have across the country. And we're able to really just help them contrast their life and their struggles and their brokenness to the life that God has created them to live. And we do that, as you just heard, through testimony, by teaching classes that are all led by people who will tell their story. We can teach a class on just about anything, but the prerequisite for the instructor is that they first tell their story. And they do that. We connect with the students on a very personal level and then give them some help to move forward. We work on that over a week, and it's an incredible time. And so many folks, thousands of folks now, have not only attended those programs, but found hope, healing, direction, and purpose. And God continues to work and continues to bless. And additionally, it's a crazy thing when you see stuff unfold. But we have the opportunity to speak on military bases and churches and other places across the country. But it really goes back to understanding that God has a plan for our lives, that brokenness and failure, those things do not have to define you. Traumas, hurts, those don't have to define you if you'll allow God to do a redemptive work. And it's amazing to me to look at our programs, to look at our own lives and our path, and see God's redemptive work in that. What is redemption? It's putting value where there was no value previously. Where there is no value, there's nothing good to offer, someone or something comes along and adds value. And redemption in a relationship with Christ is Christ adding value to what is broken and what is hurt and what is such a mess sometimes, and then using us to be a blessing, to add value to others. And that's the redemptive work. And really, that's what we get to be a part of. I don't know that we fully understood all of that. We certainly didn't when we were starting. And don't get me wrong, there's been some ups and downs and some trials. And if Chad and Kathy were sitting here and so many others that have been involved with Mighty Oaks, Chad and Kathy started it and struggled through that. And we came along shortly thereafter and tried to help with some of the struggles. And so many folks have come along, leaders and people who make it happen. And everyone can tell you their own stories personally of their struggles and their struggles through just working with Mighty Oaks. But through it all, God allows healing and hope and direction and all those things that take place. And you might ask how. I couldn't tell you all the reasons or all of the ways, but it's because people who found hope are sharing hope with other people that really need it. And it's an amazing thing to watch that take place.
And it never gets old. As I've been thinking about next week, and we're actually getting ready for our first in-person women's program session in quite a while because of everything that we've been going through this year. We had to kind of put some of our programs on hold, do some virtual sessions, things like that. So this is the first in-person session that we're able to have for our women's program in a while, and really since February. So it's really exciting, but it never gets old to see God work in that setting. And but I never get used to it either. So I'm always maybe kind of taken back. Kind of, it's just you can't explain it,
right?
And so every time is like the first time almost,
yeah.
And it feels like that because it's new people and it's God working in a different way, and it's just it never gets old watching Him work and watching Him restore lives and change them and give hope and all of that, and it's really humbling to be part of that work, and just to think that He would use us to do that
right.
is extremely humbling. And so, really, just thinking about where we have been to where we are now. And how God has used all of those things and will continue, I hope, to use us is just really humbling. And I don't think that I would have ever imagined us to be in this place doing what we're doing now. And just feel so blessed and humbled to be able to do that. And I'm just excited for the future. I'm excited for next week just to see what He'll do.
Sure.
And I think good things have already happened I think, for our programs, and will continue to do so as well.
That's good. If you know anyone that needs to attend one of these programs, and maybe you're that someone, it's really easy. MightyOaksPrograms.org, MightyOaksPrograms.org. That's our website. You can apply there, and we'll take care of getting you where you need to be if you'll just apply. If you know someone that does need to attend a program, we have men's programs and women's programs. Again, we serve veterans, active duty service members, first responders. Send the link to them or help them get the information, and that would be great. We'll do our best to serve them. And, again, I know we all have a different experience, but whatever your experience is, and maybe you're a bit discouraged right now, I don't know. Maybe you're just right on track and things are great. But maybe you wonder sometimes, what is God doing, and will God use me, and how is God going to use this for something else? Have confidence that He will, that He brings all things together for those that love Him. And just trust that God knows what He's doing. Invest where you are. Do the best you can where He's placed you, and trust Him for the future. And He will continue to do great things through your life as well. Thank you for watching. And if we can do anything for you, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.